Hey, what up squad, it's your boy K-Flow. In this video, I'm going to show you how I prepped and installed sliders on my Toyota Tacoma. Let's get this thing started.
All the tools and materials used in this video will be on my Amazon affiliate storefront. You can find that at amazon.kflow-crib.com.
So this work is being done on my 2009 Toyota Tacoma TRD Sport 4x4. So now before we get to the actual work, I'm going to announce a winner to my last giveaway for this mid-console Molle panel. So the winners are Alex Jazzo and Alejandro Magno. Congrats to you guys. I'm going to be reaching out to you for shipping details so I can ship these things out to you. Now make sure you hit that subscribe button because I have a few more fabrication ideas that I'm executing in the future, and I'll be giving them away as well. And if you want a set, I will be selling these on my store, so make sure you check that out. Go to kflow-crib.com. So now let's talk about the sliders. Here's what the sliders looked like when they were delivered directly to me from Amazon. So these are definitely very solid sliders with 1/8 inch thickness of the tubing itself and 3/16 inch thickness of the flanges that mount directly onto the truck. Now I'm not going to spend too much time on the prepping and painting process, but here's the basic idea. Step 1 is we take our 220 grit sandpaper and scuff all the surfaces of that slider. Step 2, we take our acetone soaked rag and wipe down everything as much as we can, about 3 times is what I did. Step 3 is I took grease and wax remover and pretty much did a final cleanup on everything. Step 4, I applied 2 layers of POR 15 in all the areas except where I'm welding, then I let that cure overnight. And step 5, I applied 2 layers of this truck bed liner called Herculiner, and this is applied by either roll-on or you dab it onto the surfaces, like how you dab on the haters. Now here are my thoughts on POR 15. This is probably the strongest paint that you could apply in your garage that both rust proofs and protects bare metal. I mean, this stuff is very resistant to scrapes and scratches. I mean, it's even tougher than my Asian parents.
You doctor yet?
No, Dad, I'm 12.
Talk to me when you doctor!
Now the only downsides with POR 15 is that it dries very smooth. So if you're trying to step on them with snowy or wet boots, you're gonna bust your ass pretty good. And on top of that, POR 15 does degrade over time if it's directly exposed to UV rays from the sun. So that's why I use the Herculiner truck bed liner to protect the POR 15 underneath it, as well as give my passengers a little bit more texture when they step on and off the truck. Now let's talk about the installation. But first, make sure you smash that like and subscribe button, baby. Now I did run into major problems with the fit up. So these flanges were way too wide and ended up interfering with a lot of the existing rivets on the frame. And on top of that, the forward end of the frame actually tapers down. So those flanges cause major gaping when I'm trying to fit them up against that portion of the frame. Here are some shots. So the fitment of these things obviously sucked, and the shipping cost was not worth it to return. I had some metalworking skills and I took on this challenge. Now let's get to the garage. So here's what the slider currently looks like. But I did run into a bit of a problem, guys. So unfortunately, all the bends up top here, they're not all completely flat. So when I put it up against the frame, there's actually gaping between the 4 of those flanges. So instead of trying to bend them all in place, what I'm going to do is actually chop off 2 of these plates. So I'm going to chop off this one and I'm going to chop off this one. At least
from this dotted line and up. Reason being is I can still locate the flatness of the bottom of the frame using the other two. Another problem I ran into is that there's a seam on the middle of the frame, and that seam is actually preventing this portion from being flush up against it when I weld it. So what I'm going to do is chop this one just a little bit short so that this portion can still be used to locate the bottom of the frame, but not interfere with the seams at the frame itself. Since these were originally for bolt-on, the flange is much beefier and a little bit more over-engineered, so I am chopping it down. Since these are going to be welded right on the frame, they're going to be even stronger than the bolted on design. And the reason why I chopped the back end is because the rear end of the frame, as you can see, has a slant, and that bottom bend is not going to sit flush on that slant. The nice thing about plasma cutting is it does cut a lot of metal very quickly, but it's really not the cleanest cut. As you can see, it's all jagged, and here's the other one with the flange still kind of on there. I'm going to take my angle grinder now with some sanding flaps and smooth those out as best as I can. So that's how it looks after the grinding. As you can see, it's nice and smooth. Now I'll just have to do that 3 more times. Now that's how it looks, guys. Looks pretty clean after all that grinding. I currently have the sliders on 2 jack stands, and it's resting up against the frame. And this is the position where I basically want it welded. So what I'm going to do now is mark out the area that I'm welding with a silver Sharpie, so I know which areas to sand, and then I'll tack this whole slider onto the frame. Also, just another note, guys, there should be a gap of about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch between the top of the slider to the body itself, because the body is on body mounts. And if you have it pretty much flushed up against there, it'll hit each other. So that's what it looks like, guys. Now with the paint ground off, I'm going to fit up the sliders up against the frame again and tack it into place. So now I've also clamped the opposite side here, so it's easier for me to get under it and do some more tacks. It's not the greatest looking weld, but stick welding 7018 will definitely lead to the best penetration in the metal and the strongest bond. So now that everything's welded up, I'm going to clean up all those surfaces with acetone and grease and tar remover. Now that everything's cleaned up, now we can apply our Por 15 onto those surfaces. Alright guys, so this is what the cured 3 layers of Por 15 looks like. Later on, they're real thick. So as far as the gusset points where it meets the frame, there's sections like this where the gap was way too wide to actually get a bead of weld on. So I'm going to be sealing that with seam sealer. And for those of you who are curious, I have a full weld bead all the way across here. So that is definitely a strong, solid weld. And this is the seam sealer that I'll be using. And all it is pretty much mounted to a caulking gun to apply. As you can see from this side, this is the opposite side of one of the welded areas. And when you weld, the paint actually ends up burning off. What we have to do there will be the same thing as what we did on the opposite side, which is brush off any loose paint, clean it with acetone, and then apply Por 15 on this side as well. Now for the areas at the forwardmost end of the truck where it's part of the boxed frame and you can't access the back, we'll do a different method. We'll use this internal frame coating to paint the inside of that box section. This can comes with a nozzle and a spray hose so that we can reach those hard to reach areas. So for that forward box end, we'll just use one of the holes on the opposite side and then just stick that hose in there and spray away. Here on the passenger side, there's this cover in the frame, and this actually comes off fairly quickly. There's a 12mm bolt and nut that it's mounted on there. So once you remove that, this whole thing can just come off like this, and you'll have complete access to the internal of that frame. So now I'm going to use the internal frame coating to spray this area here, and then attach the hose portion, and then just shove it all the way in and spray the inside of the rest of that box frame. That worked pretty well, guys. It looks like it really coats the inside of the frame there. And I would recommend going through all the ports that you can see in the box frame. So like that hole, for example, and then just spraying in there. And do that for any of the ports that you see in the box portion of the frame. And here's what the final product looks like.
So overall, I'm very happy with how these things came out, guys. These sliders look badass. And since they are welded directly to the frame, they'll be able to handle pretty good beating. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, make sure you smash that like and subscribe button. Help a brother out. Till next time, peace.